just been joined by Deb Heslip. How are you?
Hi, nice to see everybody.
Absolutely. So Deb, you're the Executive Vice President Global of Media.Monks, and are you in Los Angeles?
I am actually in San Luis Obispo, outside of San Luis Obispo, and the Central Coast.
Oh, that's great. Well, welcome. Do you know David Angelo and Mark Filio?
I have not met anybody yet, so very nice to meet you.
Well,
Hey, how you
cool.
doing?
Good. Well, I'm Oliver Fuselier. I'm the managing director and EP at Great Guns USA, and this is Addison Capper. He's the America's editor for LBB, and literally this started like 3 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic when we were literally like locked down, and LBB came to me and they were like, how do we get to know people in America if we can't fly there and take them out to dinner or say hello to them? And they came up with this brilliant idea to have this series, and I came up with the idea of 5 and 30 anything but advertising, because you leaders were talking about stuff that like I had nobody had any clue about what you guys were saying at the time. It was just like, it sounded like everybody was saying the same thing. So we really wanted to kind of find out how you felt about certain things that were happening during that time. Here you are, big company leaders, hiring people. There's a pandemic and now you have to lay off people. How did that make you feel? How did you deal with that? Like, how are you dealing with things at home? How's that? So we're now into our 3rd year, and we're trying to mix it up a little bit, because we're now talking to opening and broadening the industry. So we have Deb and Media.Monks, we have Kevin Swanepoel, who's the One Club. So it'll be kind of interesting.
And obviously it's moved on from the pandemic as well.
Well, we have, right? I mean,
the theme,
we're trying to.
Yeah, well, I mean, in some ways, but I think the questions we're asking are still very personal.
yeah.
And I think the anything but advertising thing still rings true, but obviously we're not gonna grill you about COVID for the next half an hour.
No.
I think we've
And
done
also,
it.
when you talk about your personal life, everybody knows that eventually it circles back to your work life. It's just, you can't help yourself, right? So I try to dig up a little bit of dirt, if you will, or skeletons in the closet, not to embarrass you, but just to kind of like see who you are way back when. And I must say, I'm going to start with Deborah Heslip, who has managed, I think her mother said, do not put anything on social media that you don't want anyone to see, because you have zero footprint in the internet. It's amazing. Tell me about that. I love that. I know you were in Clubhouse and pretty big voice in Clubhouse, but tell me about the internet and social media to you in terms of,
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair question. I do have a social footprint. I do keep it private, primarily because I want that line between my personal life and my professional life. I think you have to be really careful of kind of how you're exposing yourself and how that ties into the people that you work with and the clients that you're engaging with. So it's out there. It's just more private with a smaller community. I tend to engage with family and close friends, but for the most part, I appreciate social media channels. I am definitely a fan of TikTok. I spend probably more time there than I should be spending, but I really choose to keep that to a smaller audience. So I very much value the social media channels. It's just who I interact with is what I prioritize.
I love it. Well, look, I think you're not the first person, and probably won't be the last. I think it's amazing. And you say TikTok. I think I was watching Jimmy Fallon last night, and he was doing the hashtags, and one of them was like being able to watch TikTok and turn it off after 3. Like really, because I just like get lost in that. But
it's all about beauty influencers and cats. That's my whole piece.
Is that what yours is? That's funny. I love that. Well, thank you very much and welcome.
Of course, thank you.
Absolutely. David, we're going to go to you, founder again, chairman of David and Goliath. And you're in Brooklyn. I kind of just like did a scrub of all, just so much. You have such a wealth of, background and stories. But there were some highlights to me. You're in high school, you're about to graduate, and you now are, you're ousted or kicked out of high school, and your father gets you a job as a Teamster. However, you wanted to go to art school, right? And then you're a Teamster for 10 years, and all of a sudden, behold, you're like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it now. And I think that's remarkable. Is there anything that you can kind of share?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a devastating time for me growing up, and I grew up in a very challenging sort of upbringing, and my father was a truck driver, a Filipino native and a truck driver, and he also suffered from a severe case of PTSD brought on by the Korean War, but he instilled these values in us to give 100% of our heart and soul, and to never forget where you're from, and also look out for the little guy. And so when I got kicked out of high school, I mean, who knows what I was doing. I could, go on and talk about that, but I don't think that's as important as what I did after that. And he got me a job as a Teamster, worked a graveyard shift for like almost 10 years. And it was at that point that I heard this voice within me, which we all can sort of relate to, I'm pretty sure. And you can call it whatever you want, your gut, your instincts, your soul, your higher source. But I elected to listen to it, and I just went all in with that, and went to school during the day while I worked a graveyard shift, and ended up getting a postcard called "Do What You Fear, Watch It Disappear" from someone out there. And I put it on my fridge. And first question I asked was, what place would challenge me the most? What city would give me an opportunity to realize my greatest potential? And that was New York. And came out to New York, and I've been listening to that voice ever since. And because of that, I was able to create success, create a company, sell it, create a nonprofit, and now I'm here in Brooklyn with D&G, this cultural and social impact company.
Wow, it's really quite extraordinary, I must say. Was that the voice of Brave? Is that something that you kind of coined?
I think it is. I think anything that gives you a higher perspective of who you are, and gives you permission to believe that you can achieve anything. I always talk about that before you can achieve anything, you first have to believe that you can. And when you understand that power, that inner power, that you can achieve anything, well, boy, you stop looking at challenges as being these daunting things, but more as opportunities to help propel you forward. So that's kind of how I've always seen my philosophy, or used my philosophy in life, for business and personal life, and how we raise our daughters, et cetera. So there's no sort of disconnect between that. It's always centered around, having the courage to live your truth in everything you do.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think one of the greatest gifts I think this series has given us is that we've heard from audience members that they listen to specific episodes, and they hear stuff like this. And if one person is inspired, or it changes their mind, some young creative or some trucker, or some dishwasher at it, and he's like, oh my God, like this guy got kicked out of high school, and look at him now. I think that to me is inspiring. So I so appreciate that story. It's quite amazing. And I'd be remiss without talking about Today I'm Brave, because I think that's just a phenomenal. Maybe you want to just give us an overview of that.
It actually started 7 years ago in a meditation, of all things. And I don't know if you meditate, but the power of meditation is pretty incredible, because it separates doubt and fear from everything, right? And so it was a sort of knowing that said I was supposed to adopt an orphanage in Africa. And so I came out of it. My wife, of my meditation, I told my wife, who's Cuban, and she said, "Why Africa?" And I said, "I just got to follow it up." And I did so. And it led me to Sierra Leone, which we ended up adopting 300 kids who were up against Ebola. And from that, we have created a movement, that has spread around the world. And now we're focusing on camps for kids called Brave Camp, that we started a few years ago. And it's up in Saratoga Springs, where we brought 50 kids from Harlem to experience a 4-year camp that's centered all around bravery. So it's been incredibly rewarding. And it's a nonprofit, or 501c3, and yeah, we're getting so much support from the city here, and from quite a few foundation families.
Well, I love that. What a great story. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Our next guest is Mark Figluilo, and he's the founder and creative chairman at FIG New York. Welcome, Mark. So you're in Tribeca, that's where your office is, right? Or your office is in Soho.
That's where I live in Tribeca, yeah, but our office is in Soho, yeah.
Right. So just a couple of things about you. And again, I just like kind of scrubbed a lot. You have a lot of stuff
Did
going
you
on in your
dig
life as
up that I
well.
got kicked out of high school too?
Yeah. I thought it was grade school, but I thought it was grade school, but it's, no. No, actually, I mean, I love the fact that like your first concert was Elton John. It was mine as well. Where was it? Do you remember where you saw this?
Hey, the story was my sister got tickets and she was bringing my brother who's older than me, and it was his first concert. And her canceled, and then I got invited, and it pissed off my brother quite a bit. So my first concert was his, but it was great. It was Elton John in the 70s. I mean, it was pretty cool. You know, the shoes and everything. So
oh my God,
first concert.
Yeah, everything. I mean, it was like his first album, which was like blew up. It was pretty amazing. Did you ever make up with your brother?
Yeah, we got over it.
I know, I figured. Also, I assume that you're an artist, or you wanted to be an artist prior to getting into advertising?
Yeah, that's where I started off, you know, painting and sculpting like a lot of art directors do. And I went to Pratt Institute of Design in Brooklyn, and it was a great art school because it just opened you up to a lot of things. And one of the things was, you know, an advertising course, and it was actually out of Y&R. I went there to their conference room, and one of the creative directors was teaching a class. And I was hooked as soon as I started, because they threw a problem at you versus all the other classes were just like, think, you know, advertising, here's a problem, deal with it. And I really like that part of it. And I'm still hooked.
You're still hooked. Did you ever, I know one of your goals was to design album covers. Did you ever achieve that, or did?
That's a good, yeah, I did actually. Through
you did? Oh, great. Congratulations. Not many people can say that they did that. That's pretty amazing. I love that. Let's see what else there was. You said in a 2021 interview that you know, on a good day, you could think both creatively and analytically, and that at the time back then that you were designing a new AI tool. Do you want to talk about that? Can you maybe give us a
I
little
mean, I could talk forever
overview?
about it, but to keep it really, you know, as quick as possible, you know, we're all talking about generative AI a lot, like DALL-E and Chat GPT-3. And it's really important. It's going to transform everything we do. But there's many forms of AI, and I don't think our industry is focusing on the other forms. There's like the base ones, which is like OpenAI, where they're deep learning with a ton of data that very few companies are going to be able to do that kind of systems. And then there's generative, which is one of the applications they have. But there is a middle ground where you could train your own through machine learning, train your own AI. That's something we've been focusing on for 5 years now. And and I think ad agencies should think about it, because that top layer, the application, is something that we all have. And it's going to be a race to the middle, because it's all available data. So it's going to give us results. It's just going to be how you ask it. I do think there's another layer of training your own system that's closer to a point of view that your agency might have. So it's interesting.
No, I love that. I think it's brilliant. I'm going to ask Deb one more question, because I was just thinking about this. How did you get to Media.Monks? Media.Monks is a pretty phenomenal story. I mean, I knew Media.Monks. I worked for a company called Tool, and at the time of the digital era, I had no idea what digital was, but Media.Monks was just such a big, you know, part of our day-to-day conversations. How did you get to Media.Monks?
Yeah, it's part of my happy accident.
Oh, well, you know what? Then that's perfect. So let's go right into the first question, which is, tell me about your happy accident, and how did it play a part leading you into where you are today? Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm originally from the Midwest. I was born and raised in Michigan and spent my entire advertising career in the Detroit ad community. At the time, it was 10 years ago, almost to the day, I was working for a small digital agency in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we had just found out that we were losing one of our biggest clients. And being a very reasonable person and experienced person, I'm like, okay, I know what this probably means for me and my role. So I better start preparing, get my resume together, look for a recruiter. And for some reason on that particular day, I decided to go in and clear out my junk folder and just get rid of everything, kind of start fresh. And there was an email in there from a recruiter for an agency I had never heard of, in a town I had definitely never heard of. And I just deleted it. I didn't even think anything. I was like, yeah, that seems really salesy. I'm not going to even pay attention to it. And then a couple hours later, I went back and looked at it and I replied to it. And here I am 10 years later. The role was with Publicis Group. So I decided to come over. It was with a client that I had always wanted to work on. And I spent 7+ years working for Publicis Group at this agency on this particular client, which is a confidential client. And then a friend of mine went to work for Media.Monks and had referred me. And then I just started having conversations, was really impressed with everything that was going on with the organization at that time. And, fast growth being led by Wesley Terhar, one of the co-founders, and Sir Martin through S4. And I wanted to see what was going on and be part of that rocket ship. So here I am almost 3 years later. But if I hadn't cleaned out that junk mail, I would never made it to the West Coast and I wouldn't have had this connection with
I think it's
Media.Monks.
amazing. Well, also the fact that you, like, your instinct said, go back and look at your trash, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you would do this thing and it's like, that's an instinct that's pretty amazing,
Yeah, for me, it's like, you have to be curious, right? And if
Yeah.
you're not curious and if you don't take chances and take risks, you don't, you're not going to have opportunities and experiences. So I always look at that moment like, I was curious, I dug into it, I acted on it, and it created a really great, amazing career for myself, and I've met amazing people along the way, and I feel like very, very lucky that I just sort of dug deep and went for it.
That's a great story. During the pandemic, I think taught us so many things. And there was a lot of really amazing things that came out of it. One of them was, to literally you guys make decisions, 500, every day without even thinking about it prior to the pandemic. And then the pandemic hits and you have to now stop and go, oh man, maybe I should. So the fact that you took a minute and was literally yeah, I'm going to go back to that, that action that I did. Let me see what it did. That really was a big part in where you are today. It's great. It's a great story.
I also kept up that curiosity and that courage, and I switched roles during the middle of the pandemic. So doing all of the interviewing, online and meeting people and onboarding and, jumping into an entirely new organization. It was, I wouldn't say it was easy, and it's very challenging for anybody to do that in any normal time. But yeah, it's taking chances, being curious, being courageous. Things don't always come natural, but when you do it, you can have a greater path to success and opportunity.
Yeah, I love be brave, right, David? I love that.
Be brave.
David, what about you? Is there I think you have so many happy accidents, but yeah, tell us.
I think that my happy accident was really getting kicked out of high school, but really going from, you can't help but go down a rabbit hole of despair and destruction when something like that happens, right? But having that sense of awareness and being able to look at it differently, where you're not beating yourself up over failing or making a huge mistake, but looking at it from a completely different perspective and seeing the lesson that it's serving you. And so I think that's probably the most important part of a happy accident is understanding that everything happens for a reason and that there really are no accidents in life. It's just up to you to sort of be able to look at that, unlock it, and see the opportunity that it presents. And so from that, moving to New York and experiencing New York, I'm originally from the Bay Area, from the East Bay, San Leandro, which is right outside of Oakland and San Francisco. And I didn't know anyone in New York. All I had was a 10-speed, a basketball and a sleeping bag and a dream to work on Madison Avenue, which I did at DDB. And was very fortunate to create a campaign for the New York Lottery, the Hey You Never Know campaign with my partner, and got introduced to Clinton. And next thing you know, I'm doing this campaign and all that. And when I look back at that accident, I just take a look, just like Deb talks about, where you kind of look back and at all of those sort of moments in time that were a result of you having that sort of curiosity or that courage to look at it differently. And because of that, I met my wife here in New York. I have 2 daughters because of that. I have friends and brand partnerships that I would never have had I not got kicked out of high school. So looking back at that now, I thank it. I thank the person that kicked me out. I thank the fact that I made the mistake, and I thank that younger version of me who had the courage to say, I'm going to look at this differently.
Wow. I mean, you just said it. I mean, really thanking that younger version of you, because,
Yeah.
you know, I listened to your story and even Deb's story, soon to Mark's story. I don't know that I had the wherewithal to make those kind of decisions. I don't know. Like, I just love the fact that somehow, through your upbringing and your father and just everything that you went through, that you even thought about going to art school in high school and then ended up getting kicked out. That in and of itself is crazy. But to really just listen to that younger self and really like kind of, you know, when young people hear this story, you know, it is about questioning at an early age. It is about thinking about where you want to be and what you want to do. And yeah, so I love that.
It's about being scrappy, you know, when you think
Yeah.
about coming from a environment where you didn't have a lot, right? And it forces you to think differently, to be more entrepreneurial, to be scrappy. And you never lose that, right? And so
No.
as Mark was saying, being an art director, and I could totally relate to that because I grew up as an art director in the industry. You don't ever stop being an art director, first of all. You don't ever stop being a creative. Doesn't matter how old you are, because, you know, great ideas don't know how old you are, right? And so I just look at that sort of, you know, that desire to be a tinker, to be a craftsperson, to be somebody who is always looking at finding new and different ways to sort of unlock ideas. And that comes from that spirit of, you know, making more with less. And, you know, somehow we were able to sort of create an agency that's about that as well. So.
Wow. Thank you very much. What about you, Mark? What's your happy accident?
Well, I talked about that one class I took really affected, you know, the course of things. But getting back to what a couple of you guys have talked about is bravery. Starting your own agency, I think, and there's people like David that, you know, modeled it for us. But that was probably the biggest leap I took, and it was the happiest leap I took. It really changed everything for me in a really great way. And one thing I talk to clients about, and this theme of bravery, I think is great, because one thing I talk to clients about is risk sounds so risky, but it's just not. It's doing the same thing as the risky part. And I always challenge them, like, tell me a campaign that took a risk that really hurt the brand. And there's very few examples of it. I could tell you countless stories of brands that did the same old shit, and they really did hurt the brand. So I think this idea of risk pays off is a really good theme, because I really believe it.
Yeah, I love that. I you know, look, at what point did you, how long ago did you start
We're in our 10th year, so we're just about to celebrate 10 years. Yeah.
So 10 years. So yeah, bravo for sure. Like, that's just monumental, and has made it through the pandemic. How that, you know, the year before, or let's just say 6 months before, you obviously were thinking about this. Like, how wasn't that fearful? Was that like monumentally a challenge, you know, emotionally, and just how, you know, in terms of, did fear obviously didn't stop you, here you are today, but is there any kind of
pandemic?
No, just starting the company, you know, 6 months before you started the company, is there any learnings from that you can share with people?
Well, when I started, like, one thing is I was always at big agencies, whether it was Leo Burnett or TBWA, and I really enjoyed my career. You know, like all you guys, like, it was really a great experience for me. But I just got to a point where I felt like I was starting to repeat myself, and everybody I talked to, because I was thinking about moving jobs, everyone was kind of doing the same thing, is what I felt like. And I felt like I can't keep doing the same thing. So I had to just jump in and try something different and take that risk we were talking about. And even if I failed, I felt like at least I'll prove this to myself. And I've done it in the past. Like, I moved to Japan when I was younger with Leo Burnett, and every time I took a risk, it would pay off for me. So I just decided to jump in and do it. And it, like I said, it was the best thing I've ever done.
I love it. Well, congratulations after 10 years. It's amazing.
Thanks.
Let's go to the next question, which is, what is the, you know, I don't know if you remember the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was talking, the words that people were saying were pivot and, you know, authentic, and just so many of these words that were annoying, I think. But what was the most inspiring word, and what was the most annoying word or words? Deb, let's go with you first, that you have kind of heard in the past, like, year, let's say.
I'm gonna spin it a little bit because I'm looking at it with fresh eyes. So one of the words that is inspiring to me this year, based on experience, is pride. I always thought that I understood what it meant to be proud, and there's been times in my career I'm like, oh, I'm so proud of myself, and other times I'm like, oh, I just didn't get the thing that I wanted or where I needed to be. But truly, this year I understand it because my daughter is graduating from college, and like, it's a very different feeling that I've ever felt before. It's an emotion that I couldn't have expected. It just is, it's overwhelming. But then what I was able to do is say, you know what? There's been so many moments for me professionally and for me personally where I wish I would have, if I could go back, I would reinvent what pride meant to me, or rethink about what pride meant to me. So it's inspiring for me this year because moving forward, it's going to be definitely a part of how I look and how I value things, and how I feel, feel about my personal successes, how I feel about my family's successes. So it's an inspiration word for me this year.
I
And
love
on
that
the
word.
opposite side of it, on the opposite side of it, the word that's I would say, most troublesome for me is failure. Because I
Mm.
think it's something that we tend to keep really close to us, because if we're preparing ourselves for failure, then if you don't have that success, you're like, oh yeah, it's okay. I knew I was gonna fail. And now I'm looking at it as like, instead of failure as that protection word, what if we look at it as like, hey, what if I succeed? That's what I want to look at, is what if I succeed, and this turns out amazing, and I have this amazing opportunity, or my daughter goes on and finds the best career, and it's not necessarily based on what we thought it would be. So it's just I want to bring different context to both words.
Yeah, I think I've always heard that, if you learn, you can't learn unless you fail. You have to get up and, but the truth is that is a good way to kind of look at it and spin it. And I think it's a really good word. And I think it's you spun it very well for us. And I hope people hear this and are inspired by that for sure. I love that. And but I do love pride. Pride is a great one as well. I think I say that to my friends a lot, and I mean it. When you say you're proud of someone, it's it's like my father and my mother are both passed, and it'd be great for them to
Yeah.
be proud of me. I'm sure they are, but for someone to really put that kind of word on you is really a gift. So I'm really happy you found that word. That's a really
Yeah,
good
and
one.
let yourself feel the pride. Let yourself feel proud of
Yeah,
your own
yeah,
accomplishments. Feel
yeah,
pride for other people. It
yeah.
is such a great feeling.
It is. Yeah, great, great, great word. What about you, Mark?
Well, mine's smaller. So I've noticed over the past couple of years, they added so much to thank you. So thank you so much. And I've noticed it everywhere. And it's pissing me off because thank you is a pretty good economic word choice. And it means something. It's just people, exaggerating their thankfulness. So it pisses me off. And it's part of the bigger thing where people talk about, I literally almost died. Like people just, making things bigger than they are. So it's a theme of mine, but thank you so much for asking.
Yeah. That literally made me, laugh. I love it. Well, good. What about you, David?
The most inspiring word for me that has stood out is heart. And when I think, first and foremost, we know that based on research that consumers care more about brands that stand for something outside of just trying to sell a product, right? And if you have a clear idea of your values and march to that beat in everything that you do, you stand a very good chance of becoming more than a product per se, but a mindset, and a shared mindset, one that shares a belief that doing right by people is and the world is great for business. And so that belief begins with when we consciously sort of shift or decide to go from sell to serve, right? And to go from pushing products to the masses to being of service to its consumers and communities. And it takes courage to embrace a more caring path like that, but it takes heart, to know it's the right thing to do. So I think that is not only a beautiful word, but also a great opportunity for our industry, because heart-driven brands and action are the ones that make people truly feel the power of their intention. And the most annoying word for me is can't. and that it can't be done. And I said this before, that before you can achieve anything great, you first have to believe that you can. And the power of can has the ability to motivate the masses and instill a sense of like boundless freedom in ways that can't. And so when I hear that word can't, it it just kind of asks, it begs me to ask the question, how can we get rid of that apostrophe and T so that it can free people up to really see what's possible?
I love that. I have a question based on your first inspiring word, heart. Do you think that heart was always in advertising, not just you specifically, but it seems like the pandemic kind of brought that to the forefront. It kind of forced us to really kind of listen to people and listen to consumers, whereas I think we might have been kind of, not paying attention. What do you think?
I think well, first and foremost, heart is eternal. It's in all of us. Right? It's not like something that we, get off a shelf or read in a book. It's present in all of us, right? It makes us feel something. When we watch a movie and we feel something, we feel that emotion. When we see somebody and their authentic intent, we feel it, right? And during the pandemic, I think I wrote an article that was all about the notion of recognizing that heart in brands and people during challenge. And the one question that I had is, if that was truly from the heart, why would it ever need to stop, right? And so now what you're seeing a lot of companies and brands that are pulling back and saying, well, we got to get back to selling, as opposed to understanding that, there was a lot of progress that was made in the pandemic for brands. And those are the brands that really stood for something and embraced their heart and embraced their true commitment to consumers and their communities. And when you take a look at the impact that was created from that to their bottom line, I mean, it's pretty insane, right? So why would we ever need to go back to the way it was, where we're just trying to hard sell people? Why can't we continue to show up in ways that really reflect the brand's intent of creating greater products, great experiences, and great relationships with the people that that they, for the most part, sell products to?
Yeah. What do you think, Mark? You agree? Deb?
I do think there's a danger, though, and David, you know this, but the brands that do it without really committing to it, it's a really dangerous layer to add. Or they say one thing and then, now let's talk about the 6-second video campaign that we're really going to do. And unfortunately, I see that more than the other. So I'm actually yearning for a return to good old fashioned honest hard sell. So maybe David and I disagree on this. It's not like,
I love that.
when I meet that client who could really commit, I am all in 100%. Like I said, most clients are doing a little bit of everything, which is dangerous. I'd like it, if we're going to do hard sell, let's do an honest hard sell and figure it out and solve the problem.
So you're saying put your whole heart into the hard sell.
Yeah, whether it's a purpose campaign or sell the toothpaste. I don't care.
Yeah, no, I get it. Any comments,
That's
Deb?
our bread and butter.
I'm letting the creative directors battle that one out. I love that.
Okay, good. Good. Well, thank you. That was good. Let's go to the third one. Is we all have, this industry has been known for long hours, and it still goes on. I don't even know when the day ends and begins, but how do you guys strike a work-life balance? And if that's not overused, but is there a specific activity, or is there a practice that you use to turn it off when you need to? David, what about you?
I'm still laughing at Mark's response of the.
Yeah. I want to look for a hard sell.
Hard sell. That's but I love it. I love his honesty. So
yeah, absolutely.
Whenever I hear work-life balance, and this is my perspective, right? I think of first and foremost, I think that I'm a creator, right? And it's not a job for me. And I know that any creator out there, that understands what I'm saying can relate to this, that there is no such thing as, when it's your calling, there is no such thing as calling it a job, right? And a job is something you retire from, a job is something you quit, a job is something you get fired from, but a calling is with you forever. It doesn't turn off. Your creative calling doesn't turn off when you leave the office. In fact, for me, I'm walking down the street, I go to a museum, I'm walking in a park, I'm inspired by everything that's around me. So I'm always thinking, right? And I'm thinking, I'm creating when I'm with my daughters, I'm creating when I'm with my wife, I'm creating everywhere I go. So it's just like when you hear, a doctor on a plane, and when the pilot announces, is there a doctor on the plane? The doctor doesn't say, "Oh no, I need a work-life balance. I'm off duty," right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so the thing that I tell myself and that I tell my daughters who are both creators is I say, listen, do what you love. And if you in that old saying, if you do what you love, it never feels like work, and you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Do what you love, the people that you love, in a place that you call home. And when you can find that great sort of space there's no walls that separate your creativity and your calling, right? And to me, that is my perspective. I know everybody, some people may share other perspective, but I would say find the thing that makes you feel most alive. And when you do so, you'll never work a day in your life, and you'll never ever say, I got to stop at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I love that.
I'd like to agree with David on this one.
That was a hard sell.
I really believe it. And it gets to a point where I think it's harmful sometimes when the industry is telling you, hey, separate these two things. And you're wrong if you go home and you're still thinking about the project. Most people I know, and a lot of them are art directors, but most creatives go home and they're not thinking about it for the agency's sake or for the client's sake. They're thinking about it because I was given a problem and I haven't figured it out yet. And
Totally.
It feels good to work on it. It feels good to solve those problems. Now, yes, we could burn out and do it too often, so we have to be careful about that. But it's a really good feeling when you're deep into a project trying to figure it out. I don't think we should make people feel bad about that.
And you're not just doing, when you're outside of the office, if you're an art director or a creator, you're shooting photographs, you're shooting film. You look at things. Somebody said to me the other day, they go, why are your photographs so well cropped and well colored? And I go, I'm an art director.
I'm an art director.
I don't turn off that lens when I leave the office. I'm always looking. So, and as Mark said, that, it's not like you're working on your ads all the time, but I do believe that creative inspiration is everywhere, and it plays a greater role when you do sit down, and look at that brief and say, okay, I got to focus and I got to figure out how to unlock this challenge here.
I love that. Well, thank you, both of you. Deb, being a strategist, tell us your perspective on this one.
I have a bit of a different perspective. I think that burnout in our industry is real. And I do think that we need to, as leaders, focus on how do we shift our industry? How do we shift the focus so it's not the reputation that we have, right? Because it can be very daunting to people to come into the industry knowing that, it's long hours, burnout. I get the creative process and it doesn't stop. I'm married to somebody who is in the creative field, and it's always ongoing. But I do think we have to really be careful and watch out for our people, because like I said, the burnout is real. I try to lead by example. I'm not always great at it, but I try to carve out the time to take care of myself, and exercise is a huge priority for me. If I can get out there, get the fresh air, it really helps reset for the day. And as much as I love working from home, you do those morning and evening lines get grayed out. Oh, I can just check a couple more emails. Oh, I can just take one more late meeting. So I'm trying to, start my day and end my day just like I would if I were commuting into an office. So I get out and I have that drive time where I'm just preparing myself for the day. I'm thinking about everything that I need to accomplish. And then I have that drive home time where I'm doing the decompression. So this is where I'm going to separate my work day from before I jump into my family life, and just let everything sort of settle down, prepare for, shutting it down and moving into the next day. I'm not perfect at it, but I just keep setting that as my goal. But I'm also encouraging my teams wherever I can is, find those moments where you can take care of yourself. put blocks in your calendar so that you're not in meetings, from the second you hit your computer to the second you walk away at the end of the day. If you need to take a meeting with me and you want to go outside and walk your dog, do it. Just trying to make sure that everyone feels like the priority is on their well-being. And of course, clients are a huge priority. We need to meet the client expectations as well. But I truly believe we can help people strike that balance. I've done other things, like I adopted a dog, and that made a huge impact on how I'm able to separate myself at times during the day and, decompress. That I have a daughter who's graduating from college. It's like, oh, I gotta have another someone in the family to take care of. But I don't think we should turn our way from it, because it's happening. And we're seeing, especially younger people, working in a very new dynamic. They're not sitting next to each other in rooms. They're learning how to communicate. They're learning about their craft, and in a lot of instances via Zoom calls, right? So I think we just have to be really attentive to it and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and, leading by example, so our teams will understand that they too should take care of themselves.
Yeah, look, I think that's a great perspective. I think, the other thing that the pandemic taught us is that, we're all adults. It's like at the beginning, there was this, this conversation about well, do I not answer an email after 6 o'clock, or do I well, you're an adult. If it's important, it's important, your job. So it's the same thing with burnout. You know what I mean? It's I think, to your point, I think that's really smart, is to, make sure that you encourage it. And if you're a creative, or if you're a producer, or if you're in production, or whatever you are within this industry, you're smart. You know when it's important to react and when it's not important to react, and to take the time that you need to take care of yourself or not. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I saw I saw somebody, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead,
please.
Mark.
Go ahead, Deb.
No,
I was just going to say that I saw somebody had a really great signature line on their email, and it said, something, I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it just referenced, I'm sending this email on my timeline. Please do not feel, like you need to respond to it right away.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing, because people get, you see an email coming, let's say 6 o'clock in the morning, and you feel like you need to respond to it, especially if it's somebody in a senior leadership role in your organization. But if you are giving them permission to do it on their time, I think that helps alleviate, additional stress of people that are maybe working on those fringes.
I think it's great. Yeah, absolutely. Mark?
No, I was just going to add that, you touch on something that the agencies or the companies have to have programs in place, like Deb was talking about. They can't take advantage of their workforce, right? You can't expect people to work night and day. It's not sustainable, and it's just not right. Having said that, personal accountability is, I do trust people to make decisions. And if they want to, work on a project, they have every right, and they shouldn't feel bad about it. That's all I was getting at. There is this thing, we're telling people not to do that. And it's the antithesis of how a lot of creative people are.
Yeah, but I do, but David, go ahead. You have something to say?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, everyone is going to have their own opinion on that, and I'm speaking from a creative perspective, but also a founder perspective. And when I think of myself, as a founder, I'm out there, chopping my own wood. I'm out there doing all my own things, all of that, and it's a completely different sort of, completely different mindset. And also we are very culture driven at our agency. Long before culture became even important, we made sure that our company was all about inspiring people, right? And so for us, we make sure that the people that are at our company embrace the same values for change and transformation, as opposed to, this is a job, I've got to punch in, punch out. And I think that, when you have a mindset like that, you're already looking into, how can we take care of the people who believe in this philosophy? And we have this concept called, we're not everyone's cup of tea, but we are some people's favorite scotch. And so it just make sure that we use that philosophy as a filter to hire people, the right clients, and really just look after them, in ways where they don't have to ask to be looked after, but as I always say, you fix the roof when the sun is out. So you're taking care of them before they even ask for a raise. You're taking care of them before they even ask for time off. So that type of mindset is kind of what we've been doing for 23 years. So it doesn't make it during the pandemic. We didn't lay anyone off. Everyone was laying people off. We said, let's do everything to keep this family together. And then all of a sudden, after it was over, everybody left for job. So go figure. But
go figure.
I think at the end of the day that there's always going to be a different viewpoint when it comes to that, to that subject. But I totally can appreciate and relate to what Deb is saying.
Yeah, Deb, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Because I do think, Deb, that like one of the great, I hope, inspiring things that come out of this is that, young people who are getting into this industry, or even, people, our age, or people, it doesn't matter, anybody that's getting into this industry, here's what all of our perspectives, all of your perspectives, because it's just important to have that kind of, relatability. Prior to the pandemic, nobody could just like hit you up on a Zoom and see you in your house with your cat and your kids. Now you're completely exposing yourself, and that's just a gift in itself for your people that your teams and the people that you're coddling and taking care of and supporting. So I love that perspective. I really do. So thank you all. That's amazing. We're getting close to the end. So this is a big one, I'm sure, because we all seem to be a very positive, forward-thinking leadership here. But do you have a mentor, and who are they? Who were they? And what have they taught you? And I'm going to go with Mark.
It's an easy one for me because my father was an entrepreneur, and he started his company at 50, which is when I started mine. And his company actually is celebrating their 50th anniversary right now. He's passed away, but the company's still going.
Wow.
So it was pretty easy he modeled it for me, like every day of my life. Like that's and not just my dad, it was really my parents doing it together. My dad just is the guy who went to the office, but every night my parents would be at the kitchen table talking about this or that or the other thing. And it's something my wife and I still do. So that was my mentor for sure.
I love that, because I know you did. There was an article I read. You talked about your father who had a startup. It also went public, right? The company.
It was a very successful company, yeah.
Which is quite extraordinary. But you said, somebody asked you, like, how long have you been thinking about doing your own thing? And I think you said something like, I've been thinking about it for a long time. And going back to my dad, the truth is he started his company at 50. So it has always been my deadline. So I said, okay, I better do it this year. So brilliant. Like, I love the fact that kind of connection to your father was so strong in you that you kind of took the leap of faith. It's brilliant. What about you, Deb?
So I have had, I've been very lucky in my career to work with some amazing people who've offered me support and guidance along the way. If I had to say one mentor, it was somebody that I met very early in my career, was more of a friend. So it wasn't an official like mentor-mentee relationship, but they've stuck by me throughout my entire career, offering support, advice, guidance, teaching me how to be a better negotiator, all those great things. But right now, I'm really focused on making sure that people have advocates. So the mentorship is great, but we also need advocates, people who are really within our organizations going to bat for us and making sure that they're looking at our titles, they're looking at compensation, they're looking at equity. So I think those two aspects are really important. And on the other side of it, I think if we all like take a pause and we look back over our careers, like there's been managers, there's been coworkers, there's been senior executives who all have played mentorship roles. You just have to know where to find it. And I've done that recently where I've looked back and I was thinking, oh, that boss that I had at that one agency, wow, they were really hard on me. That was a terrible experience. But what I realized, like I learned so much from that person. It maybe wasn't as evident at the time as it is now that person was also part of my journey. So I would consider them to be mentors. So I've had them all, the traditional, the ones that I had to like uncover later on in life. And then, amazing to have advocates in my career as well.
I love that. Well, look, I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but I do think that it's very rare that, you get a chance in life to have done something for someone, and those people come back to you and say, you know what, you really changed my life. So I just say to anybody who's listening into, if you haven't done it, go back to those people and drop them a line and tell them what they did for you, because
Agreed.
that is just, you know, a moment in time that they will never forget. And it can just, you know, pay forward. But what about you, David?
Those are pretty tough ones to follow up. I mean, I have so much respect and admiration for my father, of course. Like Mark, he played a very instrumental role in my life and my journey. And he's no longer here. He passed away actually on the anniversary of our agency, which is kind of crazy, you know. So we celebrate his passing and our anniversary at the same time, which is November 19th. You know, for me, the true meaning of success is being a mentor, right? And most people think it's achieving a corner office, achieving, you know, buying a house and all that. Those are all material things. But I do believe that when you achieve that mentor sort of status, that you've really reached a point of success that behooves you to send the elevator back down, right? To help others realize their own success. And at D&G, we place a lot of emphasis on mentoring. In fact, on our wall is 10 brave ways, and I think it's number 6 or 7, number 6 for sure. Be a mentor, not a manager, and that is a whole different way of sort of looking at mentorship and managing, where it's not being a boss per se, but being a source of inspiration. And throughout my career, I've had many great mentors, Cliff Freeman, God rest his soul, and of course Lee Clow. But there's one in particular that I don't really give enough credit to, but he deserves it. And I know he's retired somewhere in Florida right now, but his name is Jack Mariucci, and he was the ECD at DDB New York when I first started as a junior art director. And you know, he hired me because one, he loved my portfolio. No one else in the business loved my portfolio, you know, but he did. And he was from San Francisco, went to the same college I graduated from. I graduated from the Academy of Art, San Francisco. And he was Italian. And he said to me, he goes, I love the fact that you're Italian. I love the fact that you grew up in my neighborhood. And I love the fact that you went to the same college, because people think that my college is a joke. And I looked at him and I thought to myself, shit, I'm not Italian. What do I say?
Awesome.
And I told my dad that. My dad, who's Filipino, said, you tell him anything, son, get the job. And but what happened after 6 months of working there at DDB, he came up to me one night and said, hey, listen, you're not cutting it here. And that was a huge, huge hit for me. And he said, if you don't get your shit together, you know, you should go back home. And I thought, like, holy shit, it was like one late night. And it wasn't that I wasn't working as hard. It's just that I think he saw a lot of the other juniors just killing it, right? And I was determined at that moment. I had a choice. I can either go back home or just, you know, or feel sorry for myself, or just go all in. And fortunately enough, I went all in. And a few weeks later is when we created the Hey You Never Know campaign, and which kind of set my career on this fast trajectory. But I look back at when he kicked me and he told me that you know, you're not cutting it. It was a real strong wake-up call for me, because when I think about my childhood and I think about getting kicked out of high school, I think about how far I came to hear that from someone in a city called New York, that where all the great opportunities are there for you to go after. And I had that choice. And when I look back at my career and everything that I've achieved and people that I've met and people that I hopefully have inspired, I can't help but think of Jack Mariucci in that moment. He came up to me. And so I look at him in that moment as being a really strong mentor moment, not just for him, but also for me to listen to.
Wow.
I'll have to make sure he sees this.
Yeah, no joke. I want to give me his email. I'll find him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's on Facebook. Go ask him about
Yeah.
it. But
You'll have to share it. I remember just
Jump in and
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna say something that Deb said, like, it's not always that you're looking up for a mentor. It's usually the people around you. Like at our agency, you know, I have partners. since we started, like we're independent, so we didn't have that hierarchy. It was just, the four of us, how do we do this? And we were just making it up every day. David, I'm sure you like that. You just make it up and you're teaching each other. And that's like mentorship. Like, I don't know, what should we do? And that's my favorite type of learning. And so I would say my partners are my mentors in a day-to-day, very real way. So
That's beautiful.
I remember the first time somebody asked me to be a mentor to them, and I remained calm and cool and collected. And I said, of course, let's talk about what that means. And hung up the phone and walked away. And I just was so honored. And I was like so excited, again, proud, just to have somebody, look to me to provide that type of support in their career. So it's having mentors and being mentors are just such great experiences. And again, let's be advocates too. Let's make sure that we're advocates for our people and our peers.
No, I love that. I think that's brilliant. But David said something also on the lines of that earlier about we never lose our heart. In the same way that you felt proud of that moment when someone asked you to be their mentor, you can learn to have heart. You can learn to be passionate. You can learn to be of service of people and for people. And I think that's a big one for me, is just really just making sure that people know that if you've never done it, or if you've never been of service and it's all about you, take a breath and change. It's like, it has to happen today,
You can transform in any moment in your life. There's no limit, no age.
Absolutely.
Hey, could I do a shout out to a program called iMentor? It's something a program we partner with at Fig, and it's for minority groups trying to get into the industry. And it's just one-on-one. You get connected with a high school student. You just help them make sure they get to college and stay in college.
AI has come up quite a lot. I haven't got super involved in the conversation today. I've just been happily listening. And I think that, most agencies and people are probably interacting with it in various ways, but thinking of platforms like ChatGPT, Dolly, and maybe thinking a bit more personally rather than how your various companies are interacting with these things. Are you using them on a daily basis? But as a more specific question, what was the first prompt that you asked these AIs to do? Was it just something fun and stupid, or was it something to help you in your day-to-day? And Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a good question. So my first one, I was working on a vodka campaign. So I was trying to figure out a still life, and I typed it in, and this is to Dali. And it came back and it was a piece of shit. I wouldn't even come close to using it. And then I same prompt, but I added in the style of Irving Penn still life. And it was amazing. And I mean, something you could really use. It looked like Irving Penn. And so I've been thinking about that ever since, of piece of shit from the technology. Without Irving Penn, it's nothing. It's nothing. Yeah. And there's 1,000, 1 million Irving Penns out there. And I do think it's a learning curve. It's an amazing technology. Like I said, we use it in a lot of different ways, but it's still, people with vision are always going to be in control of the medium. So
it's also how you interact with it as well, right? You gave it a better prompt, and then you got something better.
I gave it Irving Penn. That wasn't too hard.
There you go.
It just copies, So we do have to be careful. It's an amazing thing, and we're all going to use it. It's going to transform a lot of what we do, but it's a copy machine right now.
Yeah.
It's established behaviors, established information that's respun to us. So, it's cool. It's not a god. Irving Penn, a little closer to God.
Okay. Yeah. And Deb, how about you?
So I hadn't spent a ton of time with chat, but I decided to use it last week, and I asked it to create a bio for me. So it had me enter some just basic details about myself. I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away, because the bio that came back was almost identical to a bio that I had paid to have written for me, and might have been a little better. Hopefully that person doesn't see this, but yeah, I was really impressed by it. And I've just been using it for search, just like I would have used a search platform. I've been using it just to see how accurate it is, and it's impressive. I know we have a ways to go, but it's very exciting, and we just have to really be mindful of how we're bringing all of AI into our future.
Okay, cool. I'm also just going to look up if it can write me a bio now. I mean,
I actually, the funny part is I did type in some of the questions, like, how would you answer this question? And the answers that came back were like really, really spot on to this conversation that we're having, that we're actually taking part of today.
okay.
Wow.
And David, how about you?
Well, I'm going to be really honest. I haven't used it yet, and and there are a few reasons why I mean, it's definitely a strange time that we live in, and I'm sure depending on who you ask, there's tremendous upside, but there's also significant risk. And when I think of the upside, I can only imagine the possibilities, right, and how it could push the world forward. And from that intent, maybe there's a solution for homelessness, climate control, or even perhaps a cure for cancer. And I never rule out the possibilities of that, because I believe that is exactly what we're looking at here, is that what good can it do in the world, right? Outside of just do our jobs for us, or do something else. But when I think of the destructive parts, the downside, you end up going down this rabbit hole where you of the harm it can do, and in the hands of greed and capitalism. And is it a tool that can somehow replace humanity? I do believe it is, if we're not careful, right? And will it replace craft in our industry, and creativity and the need for greater inspiration? And if greed is the driving force, anything can happen in the hands of those types of interests. But I've always believed, and I think this goes back to what Mark was saying, I've always believed that human instincts are so much stronger than anything that is not human. Or I don't know if Mark said that or not, but I'm giving him credit.
I did now. I'm going to take the quote.
But and there still has to be a person, that asks ChatGPT a question. And there still has to be a soul that knows it's bigger than any technology. And the day that no longer exists is really going to be up to our good conscience. At the end of the day, what are we using it for is going to be, I would say, that is the biggest question that I have right now. I still get incredible buzz on creating something myself. I get incredible buzz on painting. I get incredible buzz on being original in that sense, as opposed to bringing 5 artists together and doing a giant mix-up. I really believe that part of creativity. And I'm talking about creativity, not about creating CVs, or bios, but creativity, I do believe, still has to come from a soul at the end of the day. And that, to me, is what's going to set it apart from any type of technology out there.
I would, if I could add just if there's a big concern, because like David said, there's a lot of them. I don't like the concentration of power. If you look at who has access to these data sets, it's the same companies. OpenAI is Microsoft. There's Google and there's Facebook and Amazon. They're the ones with these data sets, and all that data is us. We're the ones who are working for them. And now we're doing the same thing with the generative stuff. We're typing in, we're doing the work for them, and our artists are the ones giving, whether that's copy or art, we're the ones giving that data away. And I don't think that's right. I think there should be regulation. People should be paying for those. If you're saying in the style of Irving Penn should get money for that, or his foundation.
Yeah, totally.
There's lots of work to be done in this area, I think.
Yeah, I think that's to come as well. All of that.
Yeah,
legal.
What'd be really funny?
Hasn't even begun.
Yeah.
It'd be really scary for the creatives in our industry that if the chat wins all the awards and the creatives don't. I would say that would.
Yeah, that's scary.
That would change everything.
Yeah, it would. Oh my God, I love it. Well, guys, I know we're out of time. We did have one bonus question, but I'm sure you guys have to run. Thank you for time is so valuable to all of us, and we so appreciate you guys taking the time. each one of you, Deb, David, Mark, really, truly inspiring. I want you to continue doing what you're doing. And I hope that when one person sees this, it changes their lives because of you guys, and it will. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. You guys are amazing.
Very nice to meet everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
opportunity.